Let's speak now to Kristina Fröberg. She's from Forum SID, which is a Swedish organization that works for global humanitarian issues. She's also the main author of the report that exposed the issue of tax evasion in Africa, and she joins us now from Stockholm. Our report was all about the flower industry in Kenya, but this is much more of a far-reaching problem, isn't it? I mean, do most multinational corporations working in Africa, are they mostly involved in this kind of illegal practice?
Good evening. Yes, I would say all sectors are involved. Of course, not all companies. And for those that don't involve, for those companies that are socially responsible, it's really a disadvantage because they have to compete with those that don't pay taxes. So it's really no free competition.
What are the figures that we're talking about? What figures have you uncovered when it comes to the amount of money that is missing from the coffers of African government as a result of this problem?
When it comes to Africa as a region, the estimations are that there's been about 854 billion American dollars lost as illicit capital flight.
And so if this kind of money, $850 billion a year, isn't lost, would African debt be an issue? Would we be hearing about all these initiatives of aid to Africa which do or don't materialize in the end?
The African total external debt is about 29% of this amount. So I say yes. And if you look at developing countries as a whole, the amount missing through illicit capital flight is about 10 times higher than the amount they receive as overseas development aid. So this is undermining both overseas development aid and debt cancellations completely. If we don't stop capital flight, overseas development aid and debt cancellations won't be able to solve the problem.
But how do you stop it? I mean, where does the blame lie? How much of the blame goes to African governments for not collecting these taxes, for allowing themselves to be locked into these archaic colonial-era tax codes, for not doing more to shake them off? Or are they simply powerless in the face of these big multinational corporations?
I mean, you have to remember that it's the multinational corporations, they're committing crime. And they're often Western multinational companies. And they're able to do this because of lack of transparency. We say that if they would have to report the profit they make and the production figures in every country where they operate, they don't have to do this today. They only have to do it on a global consolidated basis. Then it would be able for weak tax authorities to estimate how much tax they should pay.
So it's a catch-22. If there isn't enough transparency, how are these governments to know how much tax they should be collecting from these companies?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's also, of course, a responsibility on a global level. Rich countries' governments, they have to push for transparency on a global level within their companies. And also they have to push for transparency within tax havens because that's where the money is hidden. So I'd say, of course, we need to strengthen tax authorities in poor countries, but it's hard because there's a lack of resources. But even if we would be able to do this, we wouldn't be able to stop capital flight completely because of this lack of transparency in tax havens, in the company's operations. So this is a global responsibility. It's definitely just as much a responsibility of rich governments as of poor.
Kristina Fröberg, Advocacy Officer at Forum SID, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.